Good morning. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. It is Tuesday at 11:12. So, hope everyone's doing good. It's another strange spring slash winter day. So, yeah, hope everyone's doing good. So, yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I've been really appreciating people commenting. We're at about 405 now in subscribers, and super fun. I love the interaction with people who are checking out this channel. One of the things I'm starting to focus a little bit more on, and I've mentioned it a lot before in previous videos, but my favorite thing to do is the interview segments. I love getting guests on the show. Again, the problems that I've had in the past is mostly through the technical side of things. I've done pretty good amount of video presentations or video interviews, but it's definitely presented some challenges with. I think it's I don't know. I think it has a lot to do with my connection here. The connection here in the area that I live is not the best. I have a better internet package deal now, so things are quicker and faster, which is great. But generally, it gets really shoddy, I've always talked about how you know my ability to use technology isn't always the best. But I've learned, well, I think I've learned a lot, and there's still a lot to learn. But I had a lot of problems doing shows in the past, trying to set up shows where we did have things ready to go, but there were some major technical problems, and I kind of attribute it to, well, my on my side of the fence, it was some technical problems I was having. But I think it was also due to a lot of problems just with my internet connection here. But it is better, and I've been doing. I did a show recently, which I thought came out really well, and we just did it as a phone call, and the quality was good, I thought. So moving forward, I have a couple of other ideas and two other guests that I'm in the midst of getting on the show. The other thing that is always a little bit of a challenge is just the scheduling. But when it does happen, and when we when I do get to work together with another person, whether I've done a few shows where we've done them in person, and then also through video. But when it all comes together, that is definitely my favorite aspect of the show, my favorite part of the show, and that out of the things that I do with this channel and my pages, that's definitely my favorite part, and I want to pursue that even more. So stay tuned. There'll be some more things coming down the pike around interview segments for film oriented subjects, obviously, and then also some music related subjects. I try to bring both of those two things together, so I'm excited. So I went to Bull Moose on Wednesday last week. It was February break, so I had the whole week off. It was really nice, and went by, I don't know, at a nice pace. Didn't go by too fast, didn't go by too slow. It was just really, it was really nice. And I went to Blue Moose on Wednesday and got some killer movies. I go to, I don't know what it is, but now I only go to Bull Moose in Bangor, Maine. For a very, very long time, I only went to the Waterville Bull Moose, which is a great store, and I have gotten so many great movies there, and also albums. But I don't know. I noticed, it's funny. I noticed when there was that big story about where Best Buy, the big, big box franchise that specializes in all things related to media. They when they announced that they were doing away with their basically all of their Blu-rays, DVDs, 4K releases, and then they also announced that they were also doing away with all of their online sales as far as movies go. That part was really kind of shocking. But I noticed when that happened, there was it had it had well it has big ramifications, has a ripple effect, and I noticed almost within a few weeks of that announcement when it happened, and it actually went into effect, I believe, in early December. I noticed it right away. It seemed to be a thing that was happening and affecting places right away, and I noticed it at the Bull Moose in Waterville, and it was so strange because suddenly they always had just an amazing selection for all things exploitation in the exploitation film world, and suddenly it was just like, what's going on here? Like they were all of these amazing titles, all of these great wonderful boutique labels were disappearing and they were gone, and I'm like, what's going on? And I had been there since that whole situation. I went there 3 times, and it was just continually getting worse. And then I went to Bangor, to the Bangor Bull Moose, which I used to go to originally until I discovered Waterville. And when I went to the Bangor one, I was like, wow, like this place is getting better and better. And now each time I go there, their selection when it comes to the exploitation market is kind of amazing. Like this past time I went, I couldn't believe the movies that they had. It was the best selection. There was a bunch of movies that I had in my head about trying to see and wanting to check out and definitely to try to buy, and they had all of these titles there, and it was awesome. And one of the movies that I had been on my radar for a long time, and this was a movie that I saw back in the time of VHS. And I had not seen, and they had this one movie there, and I had not seen it since I was a kid, and that is this bad boy here, Burial Ground. Holy shit! This movie is just incredible. Again, this is a movie that I definitely saw a bunch of times as a kid. This came out in 1981. It was directed by Andrea Bianchi, and it's an Italian movie. And I remember this so vividly when I was a kid, seeing this movie on the racks back in the days of VHS. This is like a slipcover version, and this is a newer, some newer artwork that they put on this release. This was released by Severin. Severin is one of the best companies out there, one of the most prolific companies. They are a boutique label that specializes in all things exploitation and grindhouse. Amazing. I have tons of Severin movies. But I remember this is the original cover, and I remember as a kid seeing this on display on on VHS, and I was just like, holy mackerel! Like it was just so awesome, and it just looked so amazing. And I used to rent this a lot when I was a kid. So, and I don't know, there were a couple of there's probably about 3 or 4 times that I heard about this movie again on YouTube from a few different YouTube guys that were covering horror movies and exploitation movies. And this came up a few times, and I was like, you know what? Wow. I remember that movie. And it's because of the original artwork where it was, I don't know, it was kind of ingrained in my brain, because it was so cool. It was, so dark and scary. But so I bought this. I got it really cheap for $15. This is an amazing collection or an amazing edition of this movie. And I watched this the other night, and I was literally blown away by how amazing this movie is. It's so amazing. It's basically a supernatural based zombie movie. It's centered around these archaeologists that are doing these these digs and at this ancient kind of burial site, and it awakens these zombie monsters that come back from the dead, and it all takes place in this like gorgeous mansion in the countryside, and it is incredible. Talk about atmosphere. I've always said before, for me, my favorite aspect, especially when it comes, well, when it apply it to movies in general, but especially horror exploitation movies or exploitation movies. To me, it's like I'm all about the atmosphere. If a movie has, I don't know, just a really good spooky vibe, I'm all about it. Even if, say the acting is terrible, say the editing is terrible, what have you. If it has that element where it I feel like I'm being transported into this really kind of eerie environment, I'm usually by the end of the film I will probably love the experience or fall in love with the movie all over again. If it's something, whether it's a movie I've seen before, or it's a first time viewing, I'm all about that. And this movie is just super badass. Like, it's all about the atmosphere. It's a great film because it has you're pulled into the story so quickly, and it has this level of where the suspense and the horror elements are at this constant high level. And so and the thing that's so great about this movie is it sustain or it sustains that level of suspense throughout the whole movie. And I think it's about an hour and 35-40 minutes, but it does some really cool things with how it really pulls or strikes that chord of suspense and horror where it just keeps ringing out throughout the entire film, and it just pulls you in like you're I don't know, it feels like you're in this really engaging, exciting chase sequence, if you will, but it's continuous. It's not just 5 to 10 minutes. It's keeps that once it establishes the momentum of the horror element, it is always coming at you, and they keep it for the entire duration of the film. Super cool. One movie which I did a review on, and again, it's another horror film, but a very different kind of film because it's a very big budget film, but an amazing movie. I did a review recently on A Quiet Place, and that movie did such an amazing job with like establishing these characters, putting you in this, well, in all intents and purposes, putting you in this scary situation or environment, and it's able to keep that level of suspense the entire time. This movie did exactly the same thing, which I was really surprised about. The practical effects in this movie are just so awesome. This movie is super sleazy and very graphic at times. There's a sequence involving, well, sex and lots of gore that is completely fucked up and amazing. And again, I really think that when it comes to, there's a lot of great newer horror films that come out, of course, but I am all about the practical effects. I don't know, it just resonates with me more than anything else. I think it's more effective. And I think that this is an example of a movie that, and the way it's shot and the areas that it goes into, this is a movie that I definitely feel could not be made today. Some of particularly around these two characters in this film that are mother and son, and it's totally fucked up, but amazing. And I just feel like those kinds of elements, would not be allowed to be tackled in a modern film. The music is just phenomenal for this movie. Again, the atmosphere is just so cool. It stars Peter Bark, Simone Matali, Karen Well, Antonia, Claudio Zuget, Edward Mannix. The cast is great. There are some wonderful special features on here too. They really, again, that's for me most of the time when I buy a Blu-ray. That at the end of the day is a selling the or it can be this the selling point for me of where I will be like, okay, I am getting this film. This movie was directed by Andrea Bianchi, and I'm not sure if I had seen. I don't believe I've seen any of his other films. I might have. This one I definitely did see a bunch of times back in the day, and it's been, I don't know, 1,000 years since I've seen this, so it was pretty much like watching it for the first time. I definitely did not see it. I never did see this movie on DVD. It was only on VHS, and it was only this movie too. I believe was probably did see this on cable. You know, it was an amazing time to be a kid. I think in the '80s, being exposed to movies and especially horror films because there used to be so many great movies that were, in syndication. There used to be a lot of great late night, Saturday night, Friday night. There used to be these great horror shows where they would do these marathons and they would show like 3 or 4 movies back to back. They would show a lot of the classic Hammer vampire movies, or they do a night of where they would show, all of these great Italian horror movies, American movies. They would mix them up, but it was so great, and it was, just a special time, and I have so much nostalgia tied to that period. I think it was not only a fun part or a fun time to be exposed and a fun way to be exposed to horror movies, but it was kind of part of my development as a kid. That's how I got into film and became, you know, the film fanatic that I am. I mean, for what it's worth, it was like that's where it started. That was where that was my school. Um, Andrea Bianchi directed Burial Ground again in '81. The other thing, this movie is, I don't think this something like this could be made today easily. When I realize, wow, this came out in '81, like it just blows my mind on how creative this movie was, the atmosphere, how in some ways just how gritty and dirty this movie is. Very sleazy. Were a few actors in this film that they came literally out of the porn industry, and you kind of see that and kind of feel that. And but when it comes to the gore and the areas, the subject matter sometimes where the characters go in this film, it's, I think, it's super dated. It's pure '80s kind of sleazy horror, but there's something about it where I feel like it was so ahead of its time. I mean, just wild. This movie was very much obviously inspired by George Romero's Night of the Living Dead, which came out quite a few years before this. But it's its own thing. It's I don't know. There's something so creepy about this film. The practical effects, the monster or the zombie design are, it's just great. Like it's just something to be experienced. Um, Andrea Andrea Bianchi directed quite a few films. Strip Nude for Your Killer in '75. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna check that out. I don't believe I've seen any of these other films that he's done. I might have. What the Peeper Saw in '72, and again, my favorite decade, the '70s, early '80s. Um, City of a Prostitute in '74. Confessions of a Frustrated Wife in 76. The Naughty Teen in 77. Jesus. I can only imagine. The Seduction of Angela in 90 or 86. Yeah, I mean, these movies look awesome. And there's a really cool documentary about Andrea Bianchi on or in this on this that's a part of the special features on this disc for Burial Ground. It's really great. It goes really in depth with to they there's interviews with people who worked with Andrea Bianchi. You know, they worked with him in on various films as a producer, what have you, as a writer, and they really go into his films and who he was, and it's very very cool. And I none of the other films that were listed or that he's directed ring a bell. I don't believe I've seen any of his other films. I definitely, obviously, Burial Ground was the film. This film, I'd say Burial Ground was probably his most successful film. That when it came out and it was in its theatrical run, you know, back in the old Grindhouse days, it made a shit ton of money. It was a very popular movie. There's a hilarious interview with some of the actors in this movie that was done just a couple of years ago, and they just say how basically they kind of trash the movie, and they say, and they also trash the whole horror genre as a whole and the expectation world as a whole, and they just say, well, we were just they're just brutally honest, and they just basically, especially this one actor, and he's just saying, well, yeah, I literally, you know, I did it for just the money. I could care less about the movie. I could care less about the director. They were, all intents and purposes, they were just terrible movies. Some of these actors were working actors, obviously, and they came out of the theater background and they were doing commercial work. And so this film launched their careers to a degree as actors in film. So they jumped at the chance to do this regardless. They basically just said yes because it was an opportunity. And I guess they got paid very well to be in this movie. And but when they reflect back on the movie, they just like kind of shit on it, and it's kind of hilarious. But oh man, it is just awesome. I think it's one of my favorite most recent purchases. I was super psyched when I saw this. This had been this had been on my radar and something I've been wanting to get for quite a while. So I was super psyched, and it was so cheap, and it's, you know, unused, so it was all sealed. So Severin, you know, I think is, you know, easily, you know, if you're into these kinds of films and like collecting Blu-rays and 4Ks, Severin is like easily one of the biggest companies. They might even be the biggest company in the, you know, in the boutique label world. But rightfully so, they do an amazing job. The packages are amazing. The artwork is amazing. The transfers are just incredible. They always pack every release. I have a ton of Severin movies at this point. Every release that they put out is just packed with special features. So you really get a bang for your buck. But this movie is just so awesome and amazing. Burial Ground, 1981. You can't get any better than this. So thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.